Hello, and welcome to the SIG Cluster Lifecycle meeting for Tuesday, January 16th, 2018. Like last week, I think we should start off with some follow-ups from last week. So the first thing I put on here was sorting the backlog. So Tim, I think you were planning on sorting the backlog for the kubeadm repo, and we're looking for help for sorting and triaging issues in the Kubernetes repo, and had a couple of volunteers. So I wanted to follow up and see if we'd made progress on that, or if we should keep checking in.
I would say keep checking in. I have windows open to rip through them, but I haven't actually dedicated the time yet. So my plan, probably today, I should get back to this and rip through the backlog and try to get at least some relative priority in congruence with the other documents up there.
Cool. And how are we doing with sorting or triaging the other backlog? I know a couple of people had volunteered. And you said
I need to poke them. I need to poke them to take sections of the backlog out from me, and then just go ahead and do it. So what I should do today, what I will commit to today, is go through and send an email to the list and poke the people that had said they would volunteer, and get that done today. It's my bad for not getting that done this week.
Well, that's why we remind you every week, so we can maybe make some slow progress, right? The other thing I found looking through last week's meeting notes was we talked about sending out a survey for what we think should be part of kubeadm and GA. So I put your name on this, Tim, because you had made the suggestion to send it out. I'm not sure we actually got a volunteer to send it out or not. So I wanted to see if you remembered more clearly than I did, or the meeting notes specified.
I thought you said you were going to send it out, but no, I know I didn't say I was going to send it out. I recommended the idea to make sure that when we push out whatever version of what we call GA, is that it meets whatever the community has deemed worthy of that title, right? Because we don't want to push something out into GA and have somebody say, hey, it's missing feature XYZ.
Okay. Yeah, I don't recall volunteering to send that out. I don't think I will have time to do it this week. So if anybody has time to, Joe mentioned in chat that this group is taking GA more seriously than a lot of other places in Kubernetes. I think Tim has mentioned in the past that is on purpose, and that we're trying to be pretty cautious about marking things GA. Maybe that's the wrong approach in the Kubernetes community. But I think we're really trying to make sure we have something that people can use and rely on here. So I was saying, as I was saying, if somebody wants to volunteer to put together a survey, I don't think it would be too difficult. We could send it out to Kubernetes dev and Kubernetes users and ask folks to forward it along to anybody else who they think would be interested. If not, I'll queue it up for the meeting next week, and we'll keep looking for folks. All right, I'll queue it up for next week. So the next thing on the agenda was I've been chatting with Lucas a little bit offline, and we since we switched the kubeadmin focus meeting on Wednesdays to have a new agenda, we decided to create a new doc to track notes going forward. And as we were doing that, and it was the beginning of a new year, it made sense to sort of do the same thing with this doc. So what I've done is I've made a copy of this doc and ripped out all of the old meeting notes from this doc and left them in the copy. And if you scroll down in this doc, not too far, down to page 7, you'll see a link to the old meeting notes. And that links to the meeting notes from 2016 and 2017. We use this doc for 2018, and then we'll probably want to cycle about once a year into new docs. I found, especially on internal teams, and when you have docs with lots and lots of content like this, they just get sort of unbearably slow to load over time. And it's sort of nice to shard them out into old ones that most people are not really going back and looking at. So the only concern with this that I have is it will break some links. So I know that all of the YouTube videos that I upload, I link into the heading of the doc for where that meeting took place. And those links will break. but the stable link for the meeting notes from the calendar invite and so forth will still point to the right place. So we may want to do it slightly differently next year when we rotate and actually create a new doc and update the calendar, as opposed to making a copy for the archive. But it's probably too late to do that for this doc at this point. So just sort of an FYI. The next thing on the agenda is another announcement. Mike, Denise, and I have been spending some time over the last week or so going through and cleaning up the cluster directory. So if you guys are watching the PRs go by, we're deleting all of the old KubeUp providers that have been deprecated for a long time. So I think we deleted 4 or so of them in the last week. And then Mike has a PR out right now to delete all of the salt. So all of the salt configuration will be disappearing here in the next couple of days. It's blocked on merging right now because we use some of that stuff internally in GKE. We make some internal changes first before we can delete it ahead. But once that's done, we should be able to delete all the salt code. We're left with a couple of providers that are used for end-to-end tests, and we're going to slowly be ripping those out over the next probably release or two, as we can replace things with the cluster API. But if you look at the cluster directory now, it's much, much slimmer than it was a week ago, which is pretty nice. This is also sort of follow-up. I'm trying to get rid of get.k8s.io, which is basically automating the install via KubeUp if you curl pipe to bash. We still use it in a little bit of our end-to-end testing infrastructure, and so we need to fix that. But once that's gone, that's another thing we can delete from the cluster directory. All right, Lee, you've got the next thing.
Sweet. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Cool. I got a little obsessive last night, and I pushed I put in a PR for this change to namespace all of the Docker resources that are created by the Mirantis kubeadm-dind cluster project. If you guys haven't used this before, it's a really useful way to spin up either a local or a remote Docker and Docker multi-node Kubernetes cluster for the purpose of building and testing code, and also playing with things like scheduler bugs and etc. And yeah, I kind of found that one cluster wasn't enough. Sometimes I wanted to test a change and kind of try a different permutation and compare them. So this was, yeah, just adding a little bit of namespacing. And if anybody wants to kind of throw some rocks at it, I would really appreciate that. It's not in a Kubernetes org, it's in the Mirantis org, but yeah, I mean, their CLA is really easy to mess with. And so, yeah, appreciate any feedback if anybody's curious.
There's been a long-standing goal or objective of mine to kill the kubeUp scriptory that a lot of people use for testing. Not the kubeUp scriptory, the local cluster up with DIND cluster. I don't know if you have any bandwidth or cycles for that, but that would be awesome if that would be possible. Because
so
the local.
Are you saying that you would want to vendor this stuff in?
Potentially, or we could talk with Mirantis about finding a new home for it to make it live in the main sort of local up initialization stuff. Because it's mostly scriptory, if I understand correctly.
You're talking about the DND cluster repo, how it's all bash.
Yes.
And then it's got dependencies on MD5 sum. Actually, this really interesting compression archive thing I've never used, it's called LAS4 or something like that, and then JQ. So
but if we
you could put it in a container.
Yeah, if someone wants to, has the cycles or time to spend to get rid of the kubeUp scriptory, because right now we maintain several different ways that we recommend folks for doing local development, and it's too many, and a lot of which is non-supported paths. Like the kubeUp scriptory, or the kube local cluster up scriptory is one-off, really weird configuration that doesn't use any of our tooling. So if it could leverage existing tooling, we talked with the Mirantis guys a while ago about this, but I think they kind of left it where it was for the time being. I think we tried to do an initial pass on it, but I don't think there'd be any detractors that I'm aware of from making this happen. That I think would help a long way. It would also get more eyeballs using kubeadm by default as part of their testing.
Yeah. How do you feel about some of the hacks that are necessary in order to get kubeadm running in a container, like skipping pre-flight checks and things like that? Are these things that we are fine with and like would suggest people use this tooling for development, etc.?
I think for local setup, I don't see a problem with it. I'm not going to recommend my local configuration because it's bananas. But I think for most people who want to have like a single cluster like install, I think it's super useful.
Cool.
Yeah, I also think maybe creating like a separate guide for this would be really useful in the official like docs repo, because you know, if we like sanction this as like the blessed way to do it, I think we might need some more documentation, like apart from just the project README. So maybe if we can just create a very lightweight guide that lives in the docs repo, that would be great. And because like we also have a very long running issue in the kubeadm repo, which basically tries to make like development workflow a bit easier. So we can, once we have the docs for that, I think the current like DI and DN like functionality is there. And then once we have the docs, we can close that. So that would be great to close that. Like it's been open for like a year and a half or something like that. So.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I reached for when I was trying to do the etcd TLS PRs. I didn't know how to get kubeadm into an environment where I could build and test it, and this is what I ended up using. So if that's something that we want to merge the docs for, then I'm down to help out with that.
This actually ties in really well with the last conversation, because there are sort of two kube up directories that I was told I couldn't delete. One which is being used by some KubeSpray users for local testing, because KubeSpray was deemed to be too heavyweight for dev testing, even though they use KubeSpray in prod. We need to find a replacement for them. And the other is hack local cluster up, which Derek said that the Red Hat folks all still use for local testing. And so we need to give them an alternative. And it sounds like maybe this is an alternative that we should be suggesting.
They have some very, very considerate use cases is what I found. Lots of different ways to create volumes that have your mounted like Kubernetes binaries and things like that, so that you can update the build binaries and keep the cluster up and things. I think that there needs to be a lot more documentation is what I found. That it's definitely lacking. It seems like there's quite a bit of tribal knowledge around how they use a lot of this tooling. So, but that's something that we can contribute, and I'm sure it would go well received.
Yeah, and as part of our sort of SIG's goal to make it easier to play with Kubernetes clusters, we should also have the goal of making it easier for developers to get clusters up and sort of mutate them as they want to tinker with them. Right?
Sweet. Well, yeah, if anybody would like to pull the repo and try to reproduce the steps that I have in the PR, then that would be great. Please give me feedback on whether or not things work for you.
All right, it's been 15 minutes and we have reached the end of agenda items that people have put in here. Does anyone else have something that they'd like to bring up for today, or should we get out of here early and give people some time back? Things are definitely a little bit slow in the US since yesterday was a holiday. I think people are still just getting started with their week.
If there are, I'll just like do a PSA. If there are PRs that are in flight for review, I'm going through the backlog probably today. So feel free to poke me on Slack and I'll try to address those as soon as I can.
So one thing which maybe it's more suitable for tomorrow's implementation meeting, but Lucas mentioned that like one of the action items or like changes of opinion that came out of KubeCon was that CoreOS specifically think that like self-hosted etcd is no longer stable, which we've had rumblings of for like a while now. So it'd be good just to try and like identify our opinion towards that too, because if CoreOS no longer like feel that it's stable and probably no longer going to invest like the cycles to maintain it, we should probably reevaluate that component for like HA and stuff like that. So that's just a consideration that we need to have moving forward, probably.
Yeah, Jamie, the takeaway that I got from that discussion was that until we heard otherwise, we should definitely not be suggesting that for production use cases.
Right, yeah, which is, I mean, yeah, it kind of makes sense. So we should put it like, so I have that long running pull request, which I'm more than happy to close because I'm not sure I have the cycles to keep that up. So if we like sort of calibrate our opinion with CoreOS and we say that it's not really, not only production, but maybe not dev worthy too, then I can go ahead and close that. But maybe it's due like a conversation as well tomorrow.
Yeah, why don't we keep that for conversation tomorrow?
Yeah, it would be good to understand some of the specifics of that. Well, what do you mean by it? Is it something that had changed recently in Kubernetes or at SIG, or is just a conclusion they've made while building Tectonic, running it?
Yeah, it'd definitely be useful to have like a voice from CoreOS there. I think is Ryan on the call here? So Ryan, are you able to attend tomorrow just to give some sort of insight into CoreOS's thinking? Okay, maybe not. We can ping folks on Slack or something.
Yeah, I'm here, but I missed the question.
So we were just talking about CoreOS's attitude towards self-hosted etcd and if it's going to be sunset. And so we're going to probably like in queue it for discussion tomorrow. So I said it might be useful just to have like an insider opinion of what CoreOS's thinking is towards self-hosted etcd.
Yeah, so self-hosted etcd is probably going to be removed out of boot queue. And I actually have a PR for that currently to do that. So I guess, yeah, we're going to sunset self-hosted etcd in boot queue and most likely in Tectonic.
I guess I think what Jamie was asking is if there are any more details that you guys are willing to share about the rationale behind that, and if we take a path forward.
Yeah, we don't necessarily need to speak about it now, but like maybe are you free like this? I think it's this time tomorrow for the implementation meeting. So if you're free for that, Ryan, maybe we can sort of go more into depth about the reasoning behind the sunsetting, if that would be cool with you.
Oh yeah. I'm most likely going to be at the meeting tomorrow, and there's not a whole lot to share. We've just ran into stability issues with self-hosted etcd, and we can go into it more tomorrow.
Okay, cool.
All right, I don't see any other agenda items, so I think we're gonna call it and have a nice short meeting to kick off the week for folks in the U.S. that had a holiday yesterday, and let folks catch up on all of their backlog that I'm sure is built up over the weekend with all of the activity from the people in Europe that have still been working on Kubernetes while we've been off vacation. So thanks everyone for coming. We'll see people tomorrow at either of the two breakout meetings, or if not, we'll see people next week on Tuesday. Thanks so much for coming.
Thanks, guys.